formalism in the field of aesthetics. Appearance or formal properties of things are quite important when we appreciate architectures, calligraphy, music, statue, and other things are very, very important. Historical function also sometimes important, but it's not always important. Appearance is always important. So formalism is a quite influential approach to study the aesthetics or the aesthetic properties of things. And today, Professor Zangwill will give us another lecture, still also about aesthetics. But today we will talk about the relation between emotion and appreciation of things, or emotion and the beauty of things. How important or how not important emotion is for appreciation of nature things, music, and other aesthetic objects. So I think we have learned from last lecture that appearance, beauty, and other aesthetic dimensions are quite important for our daily lives. And I hope today you will also enjoy this lecture. So let's welcome Professor Zangwill to give us a lecture.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything. Because this is the last lecture, and I've very much enjoyed this lecture series and learned from it as well. But just two that are directed at undergraduates, but there should be something also for graduate students as well. So this lecture is about music, the nature of music, or one main issue about the nature of music. Like a lot of philosophy, we deal with questions that other people just take for granted. So a lot of philosophy, sometimes your friends probably think you're crazy because you ask these childish questions which they pass those. But we must ask these very basic questions because sometimes in life, what is very strange and weird, peculiar, puzzling, are not really strange things about the universe, but something which is very obvious to us, very familiar to us. So sometimes something before our very eyes, something we assume very early, something we assume and just carry on after that, that thing is very strange and puzzling when we think about it. A lot of philosophy is like this. So, for example, the capacity of the mind to think about something. Obviously we assume this from children. I can think about this loudspeaker. So I am over here, the loudspeaker is over there, and I can think about it. So this is a problem we call intentionality in philosophy. We find it strange. How is it possible for me here to think about that there? So that's just an example of something in philosophy where what is puzzling and strange is actually very familiar. And music is a bit like that, because we are surrounded by music. We live in a world of music. You probably today have, maybe not today, I haven't listened to music, but it's everywhere. Many people walk around like this. Every single culture that anyone has ever known has had music. It's a human universal. Every culture. Even archaeological investigations of a long time ago, they find musical instruments. So this is very common for human beings. The question is, why? What does music do for us? What's the point of music? Why is it everywhere that human beings go? Can there be human beings without any music? How would that, if assuming they could hear, they're not deaf, would that be strange if they had no interest in music? There are actually some people with a medical condition and they do not appreciate music. But usually they have some kind of brain damage. But it's this very puzzling thing. It's familiar and yet strange. So a lot of philosophy is like that. Like, how is change possible? How do we think about things? And what's the nature and value of music? Okay. So, I am very enthusiastic about one point of view. So usually, when I'm teaching undergraduates, and I do a lot of teaching of undergraduates, but I usually present them with two sides of the issue. And I try not to tell them what my view is, because I know undergraduates. They will agree with me. Maybe they don't want to just get good marks by agreeing with me, but I try to hide my own view. But this talk was originally for at a graduate student level. So by the graduate student level, then I reveal myself. I say, oh, well, my view is this. But usually, so you should, although I will argue for one view, you should, if you want to hold the opposite view, you should have and defend whichever view you like. Okay, but I'm going to come in one direction because I have attitude. Okay, so I think that you need to understand music in terms of the beauty of the sound. It's a very simple idea, but it's opposed to this idea that music somehow connects with our emotions. And that's also a very common idea in the history of Western philosophy, and I hear that also in the Chinese tradition you have a similar debate between people who want to connect music with emotion and some people who say not so much. So it's, but many people have wanted to connect music with emotion, especially in the 20th century. Okay, so I'm going to have a plan, and I'm going to talk about the general issue. So here's my plan, the structure. So the general issue I will introduce, and then I will distinguish two kinds of theories which connect music with emotion. So very important in philosophy to make a distinction. So when you are writing your philosophy essay and about anything, and you distinguish two kinds of things, your philosophy teacher will give you extra marks for making a distinction. So it's good to make some distinctions. And then I'm going to look at problems with one kind of theory, and then I'm going to discuss what kind of issue it is. So I'm going to be talking about the issue, but then I'm also going to be thinking about the nature of the issue. So that's very common in philosophy. You're going in this direction, but then you step to the side and you think, what's the nature of this issue? So sometimes you need to do that. And one main issue there is to what extent the issue is empirical or more philosophical. And I'm going to then look at some psychological research by people in the field, and someone who's not really a friend of mine, but I met at a conference, and then we started doing some collaboration together. Okay, now this guy, I think he's my hero. I'm a bit obsessed, I'm a maniac. I am for this guy with a great moustache. And he is he lived in Vienna, but he was born in Czech Republic, which, as you know, they make best beer in the world, the Czech Republic. Very important. I think it's, well, maybe Belgian beer is also good, but Czech Republic beer, Budvar and Pilsner, very good beer. So, he was born in the Czech Republic, but he moved to Vienna And Vienna at that time was a big empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, very big empire with many different peoples in that empire. And it was a very important, politically, one of the main cultures in Europe at that time. And they really they were Austro and Hungary and included Czechoslovakia, a very big country, reaching all the way nearly to Turkey. And then after the First World War, it collapsed and it lost a lot. But it was a very important center of, important place in Europe for center of culture, military, finance, everything. It was an important culture. And so he went to Vienna. And it included many different peoples, which is actually relevant to the kind of music that he liked. But it was sort of German-speaking in Vienna, but included many other cultures. So I think he got a lot of things right. And he wrote a famous book called On the Musically Beautiful, about beauty in music. And he attacked emotion theories. And he writes very beautifully and has a sense of humor. But he's also famous. Many people dislike him, they don't like him, because he is against a certain, he's actually slightly conservative about music, like Plato. Plato was a musical conservative, actually, interestingly, and also Hanslick. He was the enemy of Wagner. You know, the great composer Wagner, who wrote all these very long operas, like maybe 5 hours, 6 hours, and you have to sit through a very long one. And many people in Europe were excited about Wagner, and it was more like theatre with music. So Hanslick was very keen on music and did not like to combine music too much with drama. Whereas Wagner, the opera writer, believed in music-drama combination. So you mix music with story. And he thought, no, music is about the musically beautiful, and you should not use music to go with a story in the same way. You can have a song, but that's okay, but you can sing music with words, but music is not just essentially a secondary important thing to the story and the drama. Like when you watch soap opera, there's a dramatic movement and they will play music. But the music then has some secondary role. And really that's how Wagner thought of music. So Wagner got his revenge, and there's an opera called The Meistersinger, and Wagner makes him into a bad character in the opera. But Wagner was very important in German nationalism. He had very bad politics. And on his grave, Hitler visited Hitler, and said, if you want to understand me, you must understand Wagner. So he was part of the new German crazy nationalism. Wagner. Anyway, it was also part of the Romantic movement. Very romantic. Have you heard of Romanticism? It was a movement in Europe in the 19th century. And many people in Britain and in Europe were like this romantic movement. And it was opposed to a kind of rationalistic way of thinking of politics and other things. So Romanticism, it seemed exciting, it seemed good, but it's maybe a dangerous direction. But in Vienna, they were a certain view. They were worried about this romantic movement, well, because it led to dangerous revolution. So his views were seen as being more stable, and they wanted stability in the empire, which did eventually break up. Okay. Now, so a lot of people connect music with emotion. This is a very common idea, and the point of music lies in how we feel. The feelings, in some way connects up with feelings. Now notice there's a bit of philosophy there. If you're thinking there, you should be thinking critically, and you think, well, Professor Zangwill has just said there's something about the way music connects up with feelings. And you should be thinking, that's too vague. Come on, get more precise. Precise is good in your thinking. You need to, your minds, as undergraduates, you need to become like machines in German cars. Your minds need to be very clean and clear. So you need to, so if something is a bit too vague, you need to make it, of course you start with a general idea, but you need to make it clean and make distinctions always as undergraduates. So it's a connection, but what kind of connection? Well, everyone would agree that sometimes there are some connections between music and emotion which are not really very interesting. So, I don't know if you have this idea, you have a couple, and they are maybe perhaps husband and wife, or they are in a romantic relation, and when they met, as they associate where they met sometime, maybe some music was playing, you know, and they connect this, and so when they hear this song, they think, ah, you know, this song is very romantic for me. It reminds me of some experience or something important to me. Well, of course that's true, but that couldn't be, that's too outside of the music. It's just some arbitrary contingent connection between the music and something important in your life. So I can remember, this song, you know, I can remember, it associates me with people I value or places I've been to. But really, when you enjoy music, you're not enjoying music just because of this connection. It's okay, you can enjoy the song. And you say, this is our song. Do you remember when we heard this? We were by the river, and you know, someone was playing the guitar, and very nice, you know, that was romantic. But that's really not really what anyone would see as really to build that into, make that kind of emotion into what music is generally about. So here's another, actually, Brian Adams, I think it's a terrible position, but sometimes music can connect with emotion. Here's another bad way, but cannot be what we're talking about. So, your neighbour could play music. I don't know how it's like in the student housing where you live, but if someone next door to you plays music, that can be very annoying. And if they play music at night, then it wakes you up. So where I live in London, there's a 20-year-old boy living above me, and he likes, sometimes he plays music, but I text him now and he turns it down immediately because it's very important to me. But notice that some music could make you angry, but that music might be very peaceful music. Maybe Hawaiian guitar music, you know, Hawaiian music, or some music that was very calm, but too loud could make you angry. So there's again, this is a kind of emotional connection with the music, which is sort of outside what the music is. The music could be very peaceful, and yet at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to sleep, when you have to be up early the next day, that music could make you angry. So this is not the kind of connection between music and emotion that anyone could think was important. So there are these extrinsic connections. Now music, to think about what it is, you have to consider that it is an artifact. Although it's not like, there are many different kinds of artifacts, like a watch. Most artifacts, like a camera or a watch or a pen or a mobile phone, they're things. And you can carry them around from one point to another. So they're metaphysically, they are things, objects. But you could also have artifacts which are events. So they're constructions. And really a musical work is that kind of artifact. And there are other kinds of events. And there are many ceremonies. When you have your degree ceremony, it's a kind of event rather than a thing. I mean, you come away with maybe a piece of paper, but really you've had there's been an event. So some events can also be artifacts. So music, in a sense, of course you can write down manuscript of music, but really the music itself is something which has a function. When someone writes a piece of music, it has a function. So we need to start with that. And then the question is, what kind of function does it have? And here is the emotion theory, that they have the, in slightly simplified terms, just simplified, just a little simplification here, that the music has a function of causing the emotion. So there's sometimes sad music. So I'm not very familiar. The trouble is, I don't know very much the music that you know. How about, do you know Yesterday by the Beatles? Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far. So this is sad music. Do you know this song? I don't know what the students, what they listen to. They probably listen to music from 5 years ago in Chinese music. I don't know.
The Liberties.
I hope you don't listen to J-pop and K-pop. Japanese pop music and Korean pop music. Do you know it's terrible? I hope there's no Chinese equivalent where they have 5 identical girls or boys with hair like this. expensive hair like this, and they all have nice suits and they all dance together. Do you know this music? Probably. I think it is really terrible. But so you must be open to Western culture in some ways, but don't take J-pop and K-pop. It's really, and it's too sugary. It's too sweet. Also. But some music, but we have different emotion. You might say we categorize music in emotional terms. But I don't know the examples. But many times you might say, well, music makes us feel sad. There is some sad music. So that's one theory, that music has the function of generating an emotion. Right, that's one theory. Here's a different theory. So I'm now making a distinction. And this distinction cuts across lots of 20th century authors. On this theory, the music makes you imagine emotions, or have thoughts about emotions. So actually, a lot of people in the 20th century think this. This theory was held by Tolstoy, who had an emotion theory of art generally, and some people in the 20th century. This theory is held by many people in the 20th century aesthetics. Kendall Walton, Roger Scruton, Gerald Levinson, many of the leading writers in philosophy of music hold this view. So I made a distinction. So this view, when you hear music, it's not that it actually causes me to feel the emotion. Instead, I imagine the emotion. So I imagine grief. There's some music, so I should have some music to play you, so we can. Some music is incredibly strong, like the funeral march. Dun, 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 dun. You know this? It's a funeral march. I think it was a Beethoven or Chopin. Anyways, very famous music, and they play it at funerals when they bring in the dead body. So, if you want to describe the music in emotional terms, then it seems like, well, here's one theory. You imagine certain emotions. You do not have to feel them, actually, just imagine them, and that's different. Okay, so why might you hold these theories? So here's emotional theories. Why have such a theory? So what's the attraction? Let's look about the... So sometimes in philosophy you have theories, and there's positive and negative on each side, and you have to weigh up. It's like when you... Ideas, it's not unlike capitalist behavior. You have to think, should I buy this car or that car, or this pen or that pen, or when you buy a mobile phone, you have to think, well, this mobile phone's got a very good battery, right? But this one has a better camera, more megapixels. And you think, well, you must have been in the shop thinking, which should I buy? Right? And ideas are a bit like that. You might think, well, you know, this idea generates certain explanations or has something good about it. It's interesting, actually, that of course, one of the things in consumer behavior is brand loyalty. Yeah. So sometimes you feel trust in a certain product. So some people trust Apple. I don't, I'm against Apple. If you say that, I will never buy anything Apple. I once had an Apple computer and it was a disaster. It kept freezing the screen, so I will never get anything Apple. So I have the opposite, but people have brand loyalty. And similarly, some people like Kant. They like the philosopher Kant. They just have brand, it's exactly the same as Apple. They have brand loyalty. They say, well, everything Aristotle said, or Kant. It's just the same. But typically there are good and bad things about theories. And you have to think for yourself, well, shall I buy this theory or the opposite theory? Or which one shall I accept? And one of the good things about emotional theories is that we do seem to react with feeling to music. There is a reaction when you play the music. It does affect your feelings in certain ways. That seems to be true. There is a general... We are moved by music sometimes. And it's even true that they affect our moods. So sometimes in the evening I will play something. If I'm going out, maybe I play some lively pop music. I like ska music from the ska. It's like very early reggae. So sometimes that gets me into a good mood to go out. You know reggae? Yeah. Bob Marley? You must know reggae. Bob Marley, pop music, you probably do know Bob Marley. Maybe not, okay. It's a kind of music from Jamaica that then became popular in all over the world, you can hear. I think if I played some to you, you would know what it was, I'm sure. It is true that as a matter of fact, we do react with feeling to music, right? And we want to describe the music in terms of emotion. So we might want to say that the music is sad or angry. So a lot of Beethoven, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, all right, so it's really intense, okay, and angry. So we want to describe music in emotional terms, right? So this is again that makes you think there's some connection with emotion. But I say maybe it's metaphorical. Is the music? Why? What's the music? How can the music be angry? When you are angry, suppose you are angry. Maybe someone has done something bad to you. So you believe someone has, maybe you told your friend a secret, and your friend told everyone else. You would be angry at your friend. Right. Because your friend has betrayed your secret and your loyalty. So there's some reason why you are angry. You are angry because of what your friend did. And you believe your friend did it, and you think it is very bad what she did, and you have been damaged by that. That's why you are angry. But when I hear that music, there's nothing like that. So it seems completely different from ordinary anger. So it's not clear. So maybe you might say, well, it's a metaphor, because it's such a different idea of anger. Maybe there's nothing in common between ordinary emotions of anger and this quality of the music that we're describing in that way. And it's true that we're moved by music. Music affects us very powerfully. But it could be, what should I say here? Well, it could be that it's pleasure in the music. So we're very moved by the music. This woman here is very sad. This is a picture of someone who's unhappy. This is an unhappy woman. I'm not sure what the reason is. It's from a psychology book. This is a woman who's unhappy. This is what she looks like. This is someone listening to music. If you look at people in the subway, you could be listening to very serious, emotional music, but if you look at your face, there's no actual emotion of that kind. This is someone who's intensely, what are they doing? They're listening very carefully to the music. They're concentrating on the sound. They're focusing their mind. They're not thinking. And maybe this woman, maybe someone has died with this unhappy woman. It's completely different. What's going on in her is completely different from this situation, where someone's concentrating intensely on music. And it could be that it's very sad or angry music that they're listening to, but it's not that they're feeling this emotion in that way. Okay, now I've told you what's problems with that theory. The reasons that they tell you to buy they're selling buy Apple. And I'm saying, no, don't buy Apple. Here's the reasons why. So they're giving you, so far I've discussed, so you've got these two theories, and they're giving you reasons for these reasons in favor of this theory. So far I've said no, don't accept those reasons. But now I'm going to go in the other direction and say, give you reasons for rejecting that theory and holding this theory. So, do you see that? So there's the emotion theory of music. There seem to be reasons to support it, and I'm saying no. Now I'm doing something different. I'm giving you reasons to reject it, to reject the emotion theory. This is very important, generally for philosophy. Suppose you're thinking about the existence of God. You might have arguments for the existence of God, and then you might have arguments against those arguments. That doesn't give you a reason to disbelieve in God, to accept the atheist theory. You see that? So suppose you have some argument for God's existence, from design or first cause, and then you have an argument against that argument. That does not give you a reason to support the opposite position. So this is dialectic. So maybe not quite in the same sense in Marxism, but maybe it is similar. So it's a dialectic. So if you, suppose we're having a fight, right? If I want to hit her and she can block me there, she cannot stop. So I have tried to hit her and she has defended herself. But then that's a separate matter, whether she can also Knocked me out the other way. Okay, so blocking an argument is a different thing from actually giving you a positive argument in the opposite direction. So what I've done so far is I've tried to try to show how the arguments for the emotion theory are not good, and now I'm going to try and give you an objection in the other direction, why this is a bad theory. And this is, one of them is the problem of negative emotion, that much great music is very tragic and unhappy and sad. Lots of great music, it's not all like J-pop and K-pop, very happy and superficial. There are many things I like about Japan, and Korea. Japanese pop music is just terrible. But some music is very serious, like this Beethoven music or very unhappy music, and you want to listen to that. Some people will choose to listen to this very serious, intense music. Maybe some punk rock. Maybe you listen to punk. I think there's some punk rock in Wuhan. I even heard that there was some punk music in a concert. Someone told me that we're going to a concert of punk. So punk music is very intense, very angry music. Right. And there's Chinese punk music, which is good. Punk is okay. But why do we want to listen? Why would we not be irrational to want to listen to angry, unhappy music, tragic music? If it really made us feel like that, why would we listen to it? We would have to be crazy. So I think there's a problem here, and even imagining these negative emotions, it's not clear why it would have such value. There's more to be said there because there's anyway, there's a debate there. But it seems like, on the face of it, an emotion theory could not explain, actually, why we value the experience of negative, music with negative emotional features, tragic. Why we would choose to listen to sad music, but we do. Okay, so I think this is again the book I like, on the musical beauty. So the correct answer is that you can have sad, tragic, angry music, like Beethoven or punk music. Beethoven and punk are quite connected, because you've got this intensity, anger and intensity, but it can be wonderful. And that's because it creates a certain kind of musical beauty, which has a degree of musical beauty which is very high. And this is the book written by that guy with the moustache in 1854. And I like to do scholarship on this book. I have friends that help me with scholarship of German text. Oh no, what is this? This is a later edition. Musically beautiful. Wonderful old German writing. Now, once you accept this musical beauty, then of course there can be things that are internal to the music. So some things can happen in the music which can make you surprised. You can be surprised by the music. There's even a piece of music called the Surprise Symphony. And sometimes the music is doing something and something unexpected happens. But this is internal to the music. So this is a kind of emotion, but it's about, the emotion there is directed at the music. See, so there are kind of emotional reactions. Unlike when you were unhappy with your friend who told you all your secrets, then what you were thinking about was nothing to do with the music. You were unhappy. So this was a kind of, your unhappiness had an intentional content, something you were thinking about. But so we can allow that there are some emotional reactions where the emotion is connected with what's happening in the music, because we expect certain things. So sometimes with very good music, the composer will do something you don't expect. And that's interesting. Because, oh, they go into another key, or something like that, or they change from major to minor, something like that. So there are some kind of emotions which are internal to the music. Okay, now I want to raise a methodological question. I've been talking about, I've had some philosophical arguments, and I'm thinking about what kind of question is this? So in philosophy, sometimes we want to think about how to think about something. We think about what's the nature of this issue. So I'm going on to a new phase of the argument now, and I'm going to end up coming back to where the issue, the issue of music and emotion with a certain view. But let's think about what kind of argument it is. And here's one answer. This is Plato. This is very much, you could see the argument as being very abstract. Very much a matter of pure reason, a priori. I presume you all know this. You all know the word a priori. Yeah? The word a priori. A priori, do you know this word? You're under. Yeah? Familiar idea. Are you familiar with the idea that some knowledge is a priori?
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. So the idea is that the philosophy of this is a priori. And here's maybe a 20th century, late 20th century view that actually it connects with empirical science. So many philosophers, they think this is fashionable and they call it naturalism. And they say, well, the philosophy has an empirical aspect to it. But suppose that's true. How does the philosophical question about the nature and value of music connect with the scientific results? We need to make a connection. We need to build a connection between the two. And I think this is a problem in a lot of contemporary philosophy, where they talk about empirical science, and then suddenly they talk about philosophy, but it's not obvious how they connect. So I think a lot of contemporary philosophy is sometimes a bit lazy about this. You just mention empirical science. Somehow it's supposed to connect with the philosophy by magic. No, you need to make a strong connection. Right. We'll begin with the empirical fact, though, that music does move us. So people go to concerts. So music has a function, right? We saw earlier on, but also it fulfills that function well. This is the concert hall in Vienna. Every new year they have a famous concert, which is lots of fun, and everyone claps along to and the audience will clap. So people enjoy the music. It's fun every January the 1st, and it's always live from Vienna. You can get it all over the world. I'm sure in China they also you can have this on television. Should do. Most countries of the world you can get this on January the 1st. So it successfully, it has a function and it seems to execute it well, like a watch that works well. Let's start there. Well, there's one tradition of empirical research I don't like. So I'm going to be negative and then positive. So this is a guy, I think he's from Serbia, and he investigates the connection between music and emotion by psychology. And he has a whole book. He's very influential because he writes a lot. But in fact, all he does, and this is psychological research, is he plays people music and then he asks them which emotion they felt. I think this is very bad research. There's a lot of this, he does it, and he has a whole big fat book in Oxford University Press with all his friends who do the same thing. But I am skeptical about this empirical research, because you just take questionnaires from people, questionnaire, and you get them to tick under the emotion. Is the music angry? Tick. Ah, so there's a connection between music and emotion. So, I mean, I think it's that crude. Anyway, he's quite famous, but I think it's very bad science. And sometimes some people even, when they do the questionnaire, they check your brain to see which parts are lighting up. I don't think that makes the science any better. It just adds in some brain information which doesn't support, actually does not support the philosophical conclusion about the nature of music. Here is a very bad man, and he's very happy because he's making money from something called homeopathy. It's a kind of medicine. Homeopathy, and you have very small, the idea is you have very small proportions of things, and it gets more powerful the smaller the amount of stuff in it. And it's kind of what we call New Age medicine, alternative medicine in the West. And it has absolutely no effect whatsoever, except when people believe it. So it has a placebo effect, but when people don't know with this medicine whether or not is this medicine or just water or sugar pill, if they don't know the difference, no one gets better. So it doesn't make any difference to people's health, but they make a lot of money. In France, I think you can even get this on socialized medicine. It's very bad. But this is totally supported by questionnaire research, because you take people who spent maybe a lot of money, 100 yuan, on just one of these little things. They say, did it make you better? They say, yes. Of course they say yes, they've spent a lot of money on it. So this is bad empirical research. It's the same kind of bad science. There's a wonderful book in Britain you can buy called Bad Science, by a guy who was on TV, Ben Goldacre, really nice. I'm sure you could buy it here in China. He has one chapter on homeopathy. So I think that doesn't support the idea that there's a connection between music and emotion. And here's a guy who questions it. Right, so I was giving a paper at a conference in 2009, and I met this guy, it's got a very good picture, and I gave my Hanslick skeptical talk, and he came up to me after the lecture I gave and started talking to me, and we got to know each other a little. I don't know him very well. And he works in psychology in London, and his wife works on something similar. They work together on music and the experience of music with autistic people, people who are not so good at understanding other people. Do you know this word autism? Can you translate the autism, the word? People. Autism? This word, hold on, this word. Autism, this word. Can you translate this word?
Feel lonely? Or
No, it's people who don't really understand other people properly. Okay, do you know this? So there are some people like this. Usually men. We usually have this problem more than women. But some women also have it, where you don't really understand what other people are saying to you, or you misunderstand situations. And sometimes it is very bad with some children, very severe, and they have to be in special schools. So it is a problem So I'm not sure how common it is, but many people, they don't really understand, have trouble understanding other people. Now, and this is a famous film where Dustin Hoffman plays someone with this problem. Rain Man. It was a film in the 80s, I think. It was a film that some people know. Here is a famous psychology experiment from the 1990s, mid-90s. And it's to do with a development of children. So children are very interesting. They're very cute and nice, sometimes noisy, but they're also interesting, children. So there's a stage where people at 3.5 years old, children make a big step forward in their development. And here is the experiment they do, and they have a puppet show. This is a famous experiment. And in this puppet show, you have two puppets. This puppet and that puppet. And they're showing the children. And there's, in the room, there is a chair, and then there's a cupboard. Right. So you have two puppets. Minnie and Maxie, they're called. One puppet, they are in the room, and there's some chocolate. And the two puppets, together they put the chocolate behind the chair. Then one puppet goes out of the room. The other puppet, this is Maxie, out of the room. Other puppet takes the chocolate from behind the chair, puts it in the cupboard, closes the cupboard. Other puppet comes back. Then you ask the people, the children, where will Maxie look for the chocolate? Until 3, they say Maxie will look for the chocolate in the cupboard, because that's where they think it is. After 3.5, normal children say Maxie will look for the chocolate behind the chair, not in the cupboard. So they realize you can have false beliefs. Right? So this is a big difference between about 3.5. Children go through a big difference in understanding other minds. And lots of people make a lot of this. In particular, Alvin Goldman has done a lot about this in what you're reading. Now, people with autistic condition, they stay at the 3.5 level, this level. They cannot, they tend to fail this test, even when they're older. So you all, I presume, pass this. When you pass 3.5, you could make this distinction. So they move the chocolate from behind the chair to the cupboard. When this Maxie is out of the room, so here they are, chocolate behind the chair, out of the room, moves the chocolate to the cupboard, comes back in the room, where will they look? And we all would pass this from 3.5 and 4. Autistic people carry on failing this when they're older in life. And so it's a kind of failure really to understand how the world looks from a situation different from your own. Again, it's usually men. I think it's, but there are some women, but it's usually men who suffer from this condition. Now, the interesting question is, how do autistic people experience music? And my friend, he's not really my friend. He's someone I do research with, but I've met him only maybe 3 or 4 times, but he's a very nice man, and he's expert in his field along with his wife. They work together. Autistic understanding, how do autistic people understand music? see why this question is important. Because the autistic people, they have an understanding of other minds and also of emotions. But autistic people are less good at understanding other people's emotions and also at imagining emotions. They do less well at that than normal people, or people without that condition. So then the question is, how do they experience music? Now, on the emotion theory, if you think about it, music involves a connection to emotion or understanding emotion or imagining emotion. Autistic people are generally worse at doing that than normally developing people. So, if music did connect with emotion, they would have to be worse in some way at listening to music. But when you test their reactions to music, they're completely normal. There's no reason, if you play autistic people music and non-autistic music, the reactions are the same. Now, if music is just the appreciation of the beauty of sound, it doesn't involve understanding other people or emotions. So on Hanslick's view, this is the right result. But for the emotion people, it's the wrong result. For the emotion people, there should be a big difference in the experience of music by people with autism from normally developing people. But there is no, empirically they find out in terms of everything, experiments they do when the autistic people are listening to music, they experience music in a perfectly normal way. So this is empirical evidence on one side of the debate. And that takes you back across the bridge from science to philosophy, because it shows you that the essence of music cannot have this emotional function. It cannot be the point of music to connect with emotion, because the autistic experience of music would be radically different, if it were true, to the ordinary experience. But it's not. That's the argument here. Maybe I'll leave that up. This is the skin response tests that they do on people. This is the argument, my argument, that I came up with together with this psychologist. Autistic and non-autistic groups differ with respect to understanding and imagining emotion, but they do not differ in physiological arousal indicative of music appreciation. So whatever the musical experience is, it should not be understood in terms of understanding or imagining emotions. If it were, autistic and non-autistic listeners would be significantly different, but the skin arousal response results show that they're not. So this is an argument here. So I'm then going to finish quite soon. So we reach a negative conclusion about the connection of music and emotion. There. It's my negative conclusion. Or at least that the function of music doesn't have the function of generating these emotions. And there's also some happy consequences of that. That if you know anything about, I don't know much about, I'm fortunate I don't know, none of my friends have this, but some people have very severe autism and they need special education. Music therapy works very well for them. Some of you may have relatives or know people with this condition, or know of people, and music works very well for these people. But anything to do with meaning, anything to do with understanding meanings or representations, or even thinking about stories, creates stress in these people. Music calms them down and helps them develop and makes them feel happy. So it fits with that. And also, there are some very good musicians who have this condition. He's a very good pianist. He's recorded, and so you can be very good at music. But it seems like when something is a bit wrong with you because you're autism, but it's not affecting your musical abilities. So that's some other consequences. So I'm going to finish. Well, the point of this, I mean, this is a bit of a joke. So, of course, there are still these connections with music and emotions. So, I mean, music is an artifact. So there are these connections. So this is a bus, a London bus, and buses have sort of connections with emotions. I feel I'm British. I'm from London, so I feel a certain emotion when there's my London bus. And, you know, the fact that something has some function doesn't mean it can also have no connection with emotion. So in America, or politics, in America in the 1960s, there was a huge racial issue about busing between black and white racial neighborhoods. They used to take the children and bus them from one to the other to try and mix up to make the racial problems better. And so, you know, there's political issues, but ultimately a bus is is a form of transport. It's not connected with emotion in any way, in that way. And so similarly with music, it has its function of musical beauty. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have some extrinsic or external connections with emotion. Of course you would expect that. So the basic positive theory is that music's to be explained in terms of the beauty of the music and the pleasure we feel when we listen to it. Even if it's the beauty of angry music, it still gives us pleasure, which is why we are rational to enjoy unhappy and angry music. Yeah. I'm nearly finished. Hold on. Well, there's some issues about. Okay. I think I should finish there. There's some complicated issues. There's some other issues I haven't discussed really about pop music. I'm thinking of J-pop. Is it supposed to be beautiful or just pleasant? And then I think Bryan Adams is I don't know if you know this Canadian pop music. I think is very bad. So what's exactly bad about bad music? Because it's very, 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 very sugary. And some music is aiming at more than beauty. So this is a controversial issue. Some people think it's aiming at the sublime. So this is what Wagner thought. And some people think of some music. So there's a question about how to understand punk and heavy metal. Is it really supposed to be beautiful? But we can talk about that if you like. So the sublime usually is this extreme fear that you feel by terrible things, but you can also feel the sublime experience of the stars and sky. So I'm not sure what to say about this kind of music and the sublime in music. Okay. So here's my positive conclusion, is that this guy, Hanslick, he's a great guy, he wrote this wonderful book. He was only 29 when it was published, and it was published. Everyone went crazy. A lot of people against it, a lot of people for it, but it's a very nicely written book in a kind of realist, analytic tradition, actually, even though he was writing in German. So I think he got a lot of things right there in connecting music with the beauty in music and the pleasure we take in it. So here's my conclusion. very much what I think, so one way. So feel free to argue the other way.
Do you need to have a break?
I'm okay, I can go straight on. It depends if the students need a break.
你们需要休息一下吗？
Do they need to go to the toilets or?
5 minutes.
5 minutes is fine.
我休息5分钟再回来。